Hello and welcome back to Justin Talks Villa, and I am over the moon today to be joined by another icon of Aston Villa Football Club. I think the word legend gets thrown around a lot in football, but you are, to me, a true Aston Villa legend. We're going to have a really good chat about your time at the club, playing and managing, in the next podcast. But this podcast, we're going to have a little chat about something I was a bit surprised to hear what you'd gone into, Brian, to be honest. So you've made and you've written some children's books.
Yeah, I've written.
So how on earth did you get into writing children's books?
It's something that's been in my head for years, you know. I mean, I think even when I retired, I was 26, 27 when I retired.
Yeah.
And I got really bored in a period there, you know. I was like sitting around waiting, don't know what to do. And I remember then even saying, oh, I'll start writing or I'll do this. And as you can tell, I've written or been involved in 4 or 5 books now, sort of thing. But this story, these Biscuit stories, were the first thing I thought about, because my nickname at school was Biscuit. Everybody knew me as Biscuit in the northeast, in that area where I schooled at. And I started looking at all the silly little things that happened when I was a kid. And my mum and dad were very, very important to me. My brother Alan, of course, as well, was massively important to me. And I just sat, because I've always written, even when I was a football manager, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and if I think of something, I'd downstairs and I'd write it down. So I've always written.
It come naturally to you.
I've always written about things. And I think it must be, Craigie, I bet I was 28 years old when I started writing these things.
Really?
Yeah. But I didn't really know how to piece it together, but I wrote, and I had the stories in my head, and I'd try and write them down, and I couldn't do it. So it kept getting pushed on the back burner until about, I think I'd just done my autobiography with Simon Goodyear, and we were selling that. And a friend of mine who's been an ex-school teacher, and he's a motivational speaker and everything now, he sort of said to me that he wasn't that happy about the book because he's known me for 25 years. You know, do you want to sit down one day and we'll do what he felt was a better version? And I said to him, no, I'd rather do some children's books.
Was he surprised?
And he went, what? Now, normally when I've said that, people are going, oh, you've got no idea what you're doing. And they just sort of push me down. But he went, oh, what they're about? And I said, well, I've got them all in my head. I've got like 9 or 10 stories in my head, but I don't really know how to start. And this is a fellow called Steve Vaughan, but Steve said to me, he sat down with a piece of paper and he started writing a spider's web. Yeah. And he asked me the first question, filled that in. Second question, filled that in. Third question. He asked me 16 questions and he went, there's your story. That's how you write it.
So the structure of writing, it was that easy?
So he gave me the way to write the story. Yeah. It's all right telling something that you've done in your life or that, you know, like when you've scored a goal, what did you, and all of them sort of things. But the books that I've been involved in, I've always had somebody, a Peter White or someone who's been a journalist and things like that, Simon, who's done things. But to write these, and to be honest with you, it took me about 3 hours to write 2 stories, which is next to nothing, really. 600 words, 700, 800 words. And it went from there. Then I ended up writing the whole 9, there's 10. I've not done the 10th one yet, but I know which it is. And it's really been structured from there. And when I was writing them, even when I've read them to Steve Vaughan, I read them to Young Withy, and they've gone, oh, they're dead good. Yeah. And eventually, after all these years of putting it off, I nearly did them 5 years ago. But it was a period where I lost my mum, and that really upset me. And because I'd been up to see her, I was back and forward to the northeast because she was really ill. And I remember the last few days sitting with her and holding her hand and saying, I'm going to write the stories, thinking that would make a better sort of thing, you know. It's crazy, but we're all human beings, aren't we? We're all human beings. You know, people forget, like, oh, yeah, he's an ordinary lad. I'm a Geordie boy from a pit background, you know. And when she passed away, I just threw him in the corner. And then, ironically, a year and a half ago, I'm in the local post office in Stafford, and a fellow walks in behind me, and he's going, are you in the queue? And it's like 11 o'clock in the morning, so like 1 or 2 of us old age pensioners are in there, you know, so getting presents and things for Christmas. And he had a little Geordie accent. I went, yeah, I am in the queue, mate. He looked at me and went, you're Brian Little. And I said, yeah. He said, and you're Biscuit, aren't you? And I went, what?
What?
He said, I played football against you at school.
Nah.
So I'm
in Stafford?
In Stafford. He said, I played football against you. He said, are you absolutely kidding me? He said. And it was almost as if somebody, like, I got a message, write them books. You
somebody had sent him to you to give you that.
It was one of them out of earthy mind sort of moments that made you think, crikey.
This is the time.
I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And I 5 years after my mum passing, it's like this fella reminded me, and I went, even then I went, right, I've got to write them. So it's a crazy little story, but it's true, you know.
So was it a daunting process to go through?
No.
Nothing, no. Because you'd obviously written all your other books.
No, this for me was dead easy. You know what I mean? I loved it, and I then copy them down a few times. Then my English, which is very Geordie, I'd need someone to sort of tell me, no, you can't. You put that word before that word. It's like, you know, because we talk backwards at times. It's like your little language freaks that you have. So and then. You know, I mean, I'm married to a school teacher, so all the grammar.
Right,
you know, I'd like put 3 or 4 dots, and they go, "What do you put 4 dots for?" I said, "Well, it's just the way I write." You know, so it's so to get the grammar side of it right was the big thing. But all the stories, all of them have an element of truth because there's something that makes the story. You know, like my first day at school, we moved home from Newbiggin by the Sea, which is right up in Northumberland, down to a place called Peterlee, and I was put into a new school, didn't know anybody, and I was quite a nervous sort of kid at the time, and they were lining up all the kids, and I didn't know where to go, so I just started running, and I had teachers chasing me over the way and everything and all sorts of things. So that was the start of the Biscuit being at a new school, and that was very true. Then my first game ever, because we played 11-a-side football in those days, even as a schoolboy, you know, at 8-year-old. How we had the team set up and like everybody was playing in the same position and all sorts of things like that. But so all them sort of stories. My first game I went to see.
Is that Middlesbrough?
Influences Middlesbrough.
I've read that one.
I went to my dad, and my dad was playing in the band.
Yes.
And I didn't know my dad was in. Well, I knew he was in the band, but I didn't know he was going to be there that day. So I'm brought up from a mining background. My dad was also a musician. He wrote music. He conducted brass bands, and he also had a fight or two when he was younger as well, for a few quid for the, you know, like as you did do
different
in the
times,
Northeast,
isn't it?
in the Northeast back in the early days, you know. So he was a man and a half, you know, and there's all those things, but all the little bits for every story create a real simple story for me. And
I suppose it's like an extension of writing your autobiographies about your footballing days.
It's like
you're using those memories to sort of create an autobiography of your youth. But
what people said to me, especially Steve Vaughan, who's been a teacher and everything, he said, each of your books has an element of sympathy about someone who looks after people, how you felt about looking after people. And I suppose this is really why later on in life I became a football manager, because nobody thought because I had long hair and I was scruffy, they thought he doesn't think about anything. Yeah. But I actually did, and I've always been a thoughtful person.
Deep thinking. Yeah.
And he said to me, you know, there's so many things about the books that are relevant for children about, you know, look after your teammate, you know, look after the person who lives next door to you, you know, go and pick that up. Which is
important in kids' books, isn't it?
Yeah. Pick that up and tidy up and work hard and try hard. And so all those things are in the books, you know, which to me was a very natural thing to write. But I think it actually sort of tells me something that I didn't realise at the time, that I probably was destined to be a football manager or in charge of something, because I was quite organised, disciplined, very thoughtful. I might have been a little bit quiet at times, and as I say, I might have had a period where I had long hair and you know, it was a bit scruffy but I've always been. I looked through every element that I've been when I was like a young footballer. The night before a game, because we didn't know much about the teams you played against. You know, you were. There's nothing on television. But I used to think about, who am I playing against? I'll have to try and look about him and how can I beat him and things like that. I was very thoughtful and I think that's helped me write these books myself. When I've said it to people, they go, "You write them yourself?" Yeah, of course I did. But they're very easy for me, and they are very much part of the development of what I became, I guess.
And your story. So you've mentioned Biscuit. Mm-hmm. Is that an obvious
absolutely.
nickname? You just love biscuits.
Because I was brought up in the 50s, going into the 60s, and we were never in the house.
No.
You know, and whenever I went out, my mum would give me a pocket full of biscuits. And I was out all day, playing football or running around. We used to go down the Dean and climbing trees, and you were never in the house.
Different times.
There was no TV.
Yeah. No social media.
I think in those days, I think you used to have like an hour's worth of children's television in the mid to early afternoon, and then there was nothing else. So we were brought up outside. Everything we did was outside. Everywhere I went, I used to run to, and like my mum would always say to me, she wanted a packet of cigarettes, and she'd made sure the guy in the shop knew that who I was, because you wouldn't get them. But I used to run to the shop and run back and think, and I used to try and beat records and break. So it's just a different era.
Yeah.
It's a great era to be involved in. So I was. That's how I was, as a person, and just developed as it was. And the longer hair came when I left home, because my dad used to hate me having long hair.
Rebellious, was it?
Like my dad used to sort of take myself, Alan, and my younger brother Ken, the three of us, to the hairdresser, barbers, and them
short back and sides,
and a lot off the top, and we used to like sit there like, oh no. So once when I left home at 15. Within a year, my hair was like starting.
Not having it cut now.
I did. I used to cut it myself across the fringe and things like that. I just hated good barbers and things like that. And to this day, I still shave my own hair. See. And people who know me well, they say, "You've got hairs that aren't even." I'm going, "Well, I don't care. I just do it. It's just the way I am." So there are things that have stuck with me all my life, which and these are. The starting point, which is brilliant, and I'm quite proud of them, to be honest.
I think they're really nice, honestly. So you've said you've got the 3 done. How many are written?
There's nine definitely written.
Okay.
I didn't want to write too many in case they get scrapped early, but
no, they won't.
I can continue. I could sit and write all day long. Mate.
Infinitely,
I'm like that. I'm not that sort of person who. Every now and again somebody reminds me of something, as we've talked about earlier. When you get to my age, every now and again somebody says something to you that opens a little pocket in there, and you go, "Oh, crikey, yeah." So
you're still writing your little notes and ideas.
I still write ideas and notes down. So and a good friend of mine, Peter White, not Peter With, Peter White, who is the top journalist around the area, a sports journalist. We are always speaking about little things that we could do together, because we're at that age where we want to do something.
Of course you do. You've got to keep active, haven't you?
And
mentally and physically.
We either FaceTime each other all the time, just throwing ideas back at each other, and we've been good friends for years and years and years. So he was very instrumental in the 50 Years of Aston Villa book that I wrote, which is a lovely book, really, in all fairness.
Fantastic. So we're going to. Drop it all into the comments and the blurb underneath it, and where you can get these from. And hopefully we can try and get a few sold for you, Brian. Hopefully that'd be lovely. But yeah, they're really nice. A bit about the pictures on it. Where did you get the ideas? Because obviously you wanted a specific look.
Well, I generated them
the
by
illustration.
I generated them by describing to the illustrator. The mannerisms. I mean, the lad Spider, he was called Spider because he had long legs and long arms, and things like that. And then
there's some good names in this book.
And obviously Rambo and that was a lad called Ramsey, but he was like that.
Wasn't Alan McAnally, was he?
No, I can't have Alan McAnally. Don't get McAnally in my book, please. That would be I'd never hear the last of it. No, and just the silly things that about that individual in the way that they looked or the way that they played. Other things that they did, and the thing is, out of that book, a lad who I name as Curly is a lad called Colin Morris, who went on to play for Burnley, went on to play for Sheffield United, and we lived next door to each other. So myself, my brother, and Colin Morris, 3 of us from that story of 8-year-old footballers. Went on to be professional footballers.
Have you told all the people that are in the book that you've written books about them?
I haven't told Colin. I told my brother at one stage. Sadly, he passed away last year. But I remember having a call with him one day, and he wasn't quite aware of it. And I said, I've done the books, you know, and everything. I was calling him Plod the whole time, just because that was his nickname as a kid at school. So it's quite an emotional thing as well, you know. So
a lovely tribute,
but it's it was great for me, and I'd like to think he took it in. You know, I knew it wasn't. Sure and I think that well, we all that's what it does to you. It gives that piece of satisfaction, and that you know you've said something to him about it. But yes, but I've not been in touch with Colin. I know he's still around in the Sheffield area, and I would like to get in touch with him.
You have to send him a book and say, do you recognise anyone?
And I genuinely have been in touch with Dean House School, which is the school where I was at, and spoke to the headmaster.
Be nice to get a few of those up there, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, I just said, you don't mind if I use Dean House School in the book? Oh, I said, absolutely no, brilliant, fantastic. So I will pop up there as well to see them. So but it's ironic that tiny little school had 3 professional footballers at the same time, which was
fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. So yes, the books we'll put it all in the information at the bottom and where you can get hold of them. And I know that Brian will. They're lovely, really nice, honestly. So thanks for joining me, Brian.
No, it's a pleasure. And, thank you.
Great we'll be back with a chat with Brian about his playing days and his management days at Aston Villa. So thanks for joining, and like, subscribe and follow. Thanks very much. Up the Villa.